The city stretched out like a glittering ocean beyond the glass walls of the Imperial Grand Hotel. From the top floor, the penthouse offered a sweeping view of skyscrapers, headlights, and neon veins running through the darkness. Yet Adrian Cross, 34 years old and worth more than $2 billion, barely noticed the beauty that others would kill to see. He leaned against the window, his reflection fractured against the skyline. A man who seemed to own the world, but could not master his own body. Adrian's mind drifted back to the accident 3 years ago, the screech of tires, the desperate phone call, the devastating news that both his parents had been killed while rushing to see him during emergency surgery. That night something inside him had snapped, a hidden wire pulled too tight until it broke. Since then he had lived with a private shame. No matter the women, no matter the circumstance, his manhood would not respond. Wealth meant nothing when the simplest intimacy was denied. Earlier that afternoon, he had sat across from Dr. Morgan, one of the leading specialists in psychosomatic disorders. She had closed his file with a sigh and said gently, "Your blood flow is normal, hormone levels normal, neural pathways intact. Physically, you are fine." Adrian's voice had cracked with frustration. "Then why am I like this? Why has every doctor, every therapist, every prescription failed me?" The doctor's words lingered in his head even now as the city glowed below. Sometimes trauma buries itself deep. Until you confront it, no treatment will reach the root. He had scoffed in response, but alone again in the penthouse, the truth pressed against his chest. 3 failed relationships, endless nights of loneliness, and a confidence shattered so completely that even victory in the boardroom felt hollow. The world called him a visionary, a prodigy who built empires out of code and steel. But what good was empire if the man behind it was broken? A soft knock interrupted the spiral of thoughts. A gentle voice called through the door. "Housekeeping," he answered without turning away from the window. "Come in." The door opened. Quiet footsteps padded across the polished floor. Normally he would ignore the staff. After 2 weeks at the hotel, they had learned to clean around him like shadows, invisible and efficient. But tonight felt different. There was warmth in the air, an energy he couldn't name. The voice returned, hesitant now. "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't realize you were still here." Adrian turned his head, and in that moment, his world shifted. Standing near the bathroom door was a woman in the standard black and white uniform. Her name tag read Maya. She had warm brown skin that caught the late afternoon light, hair pulled back in neat braids, and eyes that seemed too kind for the sterile environment of luxury hotels. Adrian forced his voice to stay even. "It's fine. Continue with your work." Maya nodded quickly and moved around the suite. She changed the linens, arranged the flowers, dusted the shelves. Adrian should have looked away, but his gaze clung to her movements as if they were water in a desert. Something in her presence softened the constant hum of grief in his chest. And then, without warning, it happened. A rush of heat through his body, fierce and undeniable. His breath caught. He hadn't felt this in years, not once, not with anyone. His body had woken up. He whispered to himself in disbelief, "No, this can't be real." Maya glanced up, noticing the strangeness in his expression. "Are you all right, sir?" Adrian straightened, struggling to mask the shock that threatened to spill across his face. "I'm fine. Better than fine." She hesitated, unsure, then gave a polite smile. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" He stared too long before shaking his head. "No. You've done more than enough." When Maya finally left, the silence in the room grew deafening. Adrian remained frozen near the window, his pulse racing. 3 years of medical failure, 3 years of humiliation and despair, and 5 minutes in the presence of a hotel maid had done what science could not. He moved to the desk, grabbed the phone, and dialed the manager's extension. His voice carried the steel of command that had built his fortune. "This is Adrian Cross in the penthouse. I want to make a request." "Of course, Mr. Cross. What can we arrange for you?" "I want the same housekeeper assigned to my suite for the rest of my stay." "Maya." "No one else." There was a pause. "Certainly, sir. Was there an issue with her service?" "No issue," Adrian said, controlling his tone. Her service was perfect. I want consistency, that's all." He ended the call and sat down heavily, running both hands over his face. He couldn't explain what had just happened, but he knew one thing. He had to understand it. He had to understand her. That night, he slept less like a billionaire and more like a man waiting for a miracle. Every shadowed hour he replayed the moment when she turned toward him, when his body finally remembered how to feel alive. It was impossible. It was irrational. But it was real. Morning came too soon, slicing through the curtains with gold light. Adrian paced the suite like a restless predator, waiting. At exactly 10 o'clock, the soft knock came again. Housekeeping. His body reacted before she even entered. His pulse thundered, heat rising under his skin. When Maya stepped inside with her cart, the same inexplicable energy filled the air. She greeted him with quiet professionalism. "Good morning, sir." This time Adrian met her eyes directly. "Good morning, Maya. Please, call me Adrian." Her brow furrowed. "I couldn't do that, sir. Hotel policy requires—" "I'm requesting it. Call me Adrian. It's important to me." She studied his face for a long moment, as if weighing the sincerity behind his words. Finally, she nodded. "If that's what you prefer, Adrian." Hearing his name from her lips sent a jolt through him, stronger than any medication, stronger than years of therapy. He felt something awakening, not just in his body, but in his spirit. He knew, with absolute certainty, that this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Maya Alvarez had grown used to being unseen. 6 months into her job at the Imperial Grand Hotel, she had perfected the art of moving silently, slipping in and out of rooms without disturbing the lives of the powerful. Her uniform fit neatly, her braids tied back, her smile polite but never intrusive. To most guests, she was not a person. She was a function, sheets tucked, towels folded, trash removed. The room sparkled and she disappeared. But yesterday had been different. For the first time, someone had truly looked at her. Not just looked, but noticed. She carried that moment with her all night, even while scrubbing offices across town at her second job. A billionaire had asked her name, and for reasons she couldn't explain, her heart had raced in response. Life outside the hotel was a different kind of exhaustion. At home, her grandmother lay in bed, frail but stubborn, insisting she didn't need constant care, even as diabetes and heart disease carved away her strength. Medical bills piled high. Dreams of finishing nursing school had been abandoned the day Maya buried her parents. She had been 16 when the drunk driver took them away, leaving her grandmother as her only anchor. Now 26, Maya cleaned hotel suites by day and office floors by night. Survival had become routine. Her hands cracked from chemicals, her back ached from bending, but she kept going. Dreams were luxuries. Duty was survival. That morning, as she wheeled her cart toward the penthouse, she reminded herself not to expect anything unusual. Guests sometimes smiled. Guests sometimes asked a question. What mattered was doing her job well and keeping her position. Still, her stomach tightened when she knocked on the door. "Housekeeping." The familiar baritone answered immediately. "Come in." She stepped inside, feeling the same quiet presence of wealth and solitude. Adrian Cross stood by the window again, his tall frame outlined against the skyline. She lowered her gaze and pushed the cart inside. "Good morning, sir." His response was unexpected. "Good morning, Maya. Please call me Adrian." She hesitated, clutching a stack of fresh towels. "I couldn't do that, sir. Hotel policy—" He interrupted firmly, though not unkindly. "I'm requesting it. Call me Adrian. It's important to me." She studied his face. There was something raw beneath his controlled tone, something that made her believe he wasn't simply issuing a command. Slowly, she nodded. "If that's what you prefer, Adrian." Her voice lingered in the air. He closed his eyes for half a second, as though savoring it. Maya blinked, unsettled. Why did a man like him, someone who owned more than she could imagine, care about something as small as a name? She moved through the suite, dusting, folding, replacing flowers. Yet the silence felt charged, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Finally, he asked, his voice softer than before, "Do you feel anything unusual when you're in this room?" The question caught her off guard. She turned toward him. "Unusual?" "Yes. Any kind of connection. Any energy." She frowned, unsure if this was some eccentric whim of the wealthy. But honesty slipped out before she could stop it. "Actually, yes. This room feels different from the others I clean, more peaceful somehow." "I thought it was just because you're not like the other guests." Adrian tilted his head. "Not like them how?" "Most wealthy guests treat housekeeping staff like we're invisible," she said quietly, returning to straighten a chair. "You see me as a person." His reply came quickly. "You are a person. A remarkable person from what I can tell." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. She kept her eyes fixed on the polished surface she was wiping. "Sir Adrian, why are you saying these things?" He stepped closer, his tone heavy with sincerity. "Because it's true. And because I'm dealing with something difficult. Something I haven't shared outside of doctors' offices. I think you might be the only person who can help me." Her hands stilled. The air between them thickened. She glanced at him, searching his face. He looked exhausted, burdened, but also desperate for connection. She set down the cleaning cloth. "What kind of help do you need?" He exhaled slowly as if preparing to lift a weight. 3 years ago I lost my parents in a car accident. Since that night, I've been unable to function as a man. Physically unable." The words hung between them like shards of glass. Maya's chest tightened. She whispered, "I'm sorry about your parents. The doctors say there's nothing wrong with me physically. It's psychological trauma manifesting as a physical condition. I've tried everything. Therapy, specialists around the world. Nothing has worked, until yesterday when you walked into this room." Her eyes widened. "You mean?" He nodded. "For the first time in 3 years, my body responded. To you." Silence pressed down hard. She looked away, cheeks burning. "Adrian, I'm just here to do my job. You shouldn't—" "I know how it sounds," he cut in, voice strained. "I know this isn't fair to put on you, but I need you to understand. You're the only person who's been able to affect me since the accident. I don't know why." Her pulse quickened. She wanted to retreat, to escape the intensity of his gaze. And yet, part of her couldn't deny the truth of what she felt in that moment. There was something unusual between them, something she had never experienced with anyone else. Finally, she admitted softly, "I feel something too, when I'm in this room, near you. I feel safe, and drawn to you in ways I can't explain." Adrian's expression shifted, relief and wonder mixing. "So it's not just me?" "No, but that doesn't mean this makes sense. You're a billionaire in a penthouse. I'm a hotel maid working 2 jobs to support my grandmother. We don't belong in the same world." He took a step closer. "What if our worlds were meant to intersect? What if there's a reason for this connection?" Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, but reality tugged at her. "If anyone finds out, I could lose my job." "You won't lose it," Adrian said with sudden conviction. "I won't let that happen." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I hold a controlling stake in this hotel chain." Maya froze. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. "You own this place?" "I own enough of it to protect you." She sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "This is insane." "Yes," Adrian agreed. "But it's also the first hope I've had in 3 years." Her voice wavered as she asked, "What happens if I can't help you heal? What if this doesn't work the way you hope?" He crouched slightly, meeting her eyes. "Then at least I'll have spent time with the most genuine woman I've ever met." Her chest tightened. She wanted to run, but she also wanted to stay. Against all reason, she whispered, "All right, I'll give us a chance. But there have to be rules. We go slowly. We know each other as people before anything else." His relief was palpable. "Agreed, and Maya, I promise, if this doesn't work, I will never use my influence to hurt your life or career. You have my word." She nodded, still trembling with disbelief. As she gathered her supplies to leave, Adrian said quietly, "Thank you for trusting me." Maya closed the door behind her, leaning against the hallway wall. Her heart raced, her mind spun. She had stepped into a stranger's suite, expecting nothing more than routine. Instead, she had walked straight into a story that could change her life forever. And in the shadows of the hotel lobby, someone else was already watching. Adrian waited for the sound of the soft knock the next morning, like a man waiting for dawn after a long night. When it finally came at 10 o'clock sharp, his heart jolted. Maya entered with her cart, professional as ever, but the air between them felt heavier, charged with something neither of them could ignore. He tried to sound casual, though his voice betrayed his anticipation. "Good morning, Maya." She looked at him briefly before answering, "Good morning, Adrian." The simple exchange carried more electricity than any boardroom negotiation he had ever led. As she moved through the suite, he studied her carefully, not in the way of a man admiring beauty, but as if she were a puzzle piece that had somehow unlocked his broken body. He needed to understand, yet every question he thought of sounded absurd, even to himself. Finally, unable to hold it back, he asked, "Do you believe that some people are meant to cross paths? That destiny chooses moments for us?" Maya paused in her dusting and gave a cautious look. "I don't know if I believe in destiny. I believe in survival. Everything else feels like a luxury." Adrian walked toward her, careful not to invade her space, but close enough that his sincerity was clear. "For me, it doesn't feel like luxury. It feels like survival. You've given me back something I thought was gone forever." She shook her head slightly, almost defensive. "You don't know me. You only know what you feel when I'm here." "Then let me know you," he said, his voice almost pleading. "Not as a maid, as yourself." Her hands stilled. No one had asked her that in years. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "I grew up in this city. My parents died when I was 16. A drunk driver ran a red light. After that, I left school to take care of my grandmother. She raised me, but now she's sick, so I work 2 jobs. That's it. Nothing special." Adrian's expression softened with recognition. "I lost my parents in a car accident too. 3 years ago. They were on their way to see me at the hospital, and I blamed myself for being the reason they were on that road." She looked up, startled. "I blamed myself too. I was supposed to be with my parents that night, but I stayed home because I had the flu. Sometimes I think if I had been in the car, maybe I could have done something. Or maybe I'd be gone too." The room fell into silence as they shared the weight of guilt that had shaped both their lives. For the first time, Maya saw not a billionaire, but a man who carried wounds similar to hers. Adrian broke the silence with a question, his tone quiet but urgent. "Do you feel it too? This connection, like our pain, is somehow the same?" Maya's throat tightened. "I feel something I can't explain. It's not just you, it's this room, this energy. Everything feels warmer when I'm here." Adrian lifted his hand, almost tentatively. "Touch me. I want to see if you feel it directly." She hesitated, her pulse hammering in her chest. Then slowly, she placed her palm against his. The moment their skin met, both of them gasped. A warmth spread like liquid fire, comforting and electric all at once. Adrian whispered hoarsely, "Do you feel that?" "It's like coming home," Maya admitted, her voice trembling. They held the contact longer than was appropriate, neither wanting to let go. For Adrian, it was proof that this was no illusion. For Maya, it was terrifying and exhilarating, a reminder that her world was not as rigidly defined as she believed. She pulled her hand back suddenly, breaking the spell. "This is moving too fast. I don't know what any of this means." Adrian didn't push. Instead, he said firmly, "It means I want to know everything about you. Your dreams, your fears, what makes you laugh. Even if this connection doesn't heal me, I want to understand you." Maya's instinct was to retreat. She shook her head. "Dreams don't matter when you can't pay rent. When every bill is another battle. I wanted to be a nurse once. I was halfway through my degree before life tore it away. But that's not who I am anymore. I'm just someone who works to survive." "You're more than survival," Adrian said flatly. "I see it in the way you carry yourself, in the kindness in your eyes. You still have that dream inside you. You just buried it. Her chest tightened again, not with attraction, but with anger that he could see through her so easily. It's not that simple, Adrian. You can't buy away years of struggle. You don't know what it's like to wake up exhausted, to wonder if the next paycheck will cover medicine for the person you love most. Adrian's voice dropped to a near whisper. You're wrong. I do know exhaustion. I know what it's like to wake up and hate yourself for failing no matter how much money you have. I may not struggle the way you do, but don't think my pain is any less real. The words struck her, dissolving some of the wall she had built. For a moment she saw the broken man beneath the wealth and realized his suffering had carved scars just as deep as hers. Before either could say more, Adrian's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and his jaw tightened. He declined the call, but it rang again immediately. Maya asked softly, "Who is it?" His tone darkened. "Someone from my past, who shouldn't be calling." She didn't press, but unease slid down her spine. Whoever was on the other end carried weight in his life. Adrian silenced the phone completely, then looked back at her with determination. "Forget them. Right now I only care about this. About us." Maya wanted to protest, to remind him she was only supposed to be cleaning his suite, but the words caught in her throat. Instead she whispered, "If we do this, we take it slow. No rushing, no promises you can't keep." "Agreed," Adrian said, his tone steady. "No rushing. Just truth." She gave a reluctant nod. The air was still heavy, but something in her chest felt lighter. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. Later, when she left the suite and pushed her cart down the hallway, she tried to shake off the dizziness of what had just unfolded. Her whole life had been built on boundaries: the guest and the maid, the powerful and the powerless, the wealthy and the struggling. Now, those lines blurred. What she didn't see was the figure lingering near the elevator, eyes following her discreetly. The person held a phone, snapping a quick photograph before turning away. By the time Maya reached the service corridor, her hands were trembling. She told herself it was nothing. Just exhaustion, just confusion. But in her heart, she knew something larger had begun, something that would draw her into a world of danger, desire, and choices she never imagined facing. And downstairs in the grand marble lobby, a woman in designer heels reviewed the photograph just sent to her. Isabella Roth, Adrian's ex-fiancée, smiled coldly. The Imperial Grand Hotel bustled with polished silence, but beneath the marble and chandeliers, whispers traveled quickly. Wealthy guests noticed everything, and by the third day, Adrian had begun to feel the weight of eyes tracking his every move. He told himself it didn't matter. All that mattered was the strange, undeniable connection he had found with Maya. But someone else had noticed too. Adrian sat in the lounge near the penthouse elevators, sipping a dark coffee, when the click of familiar heels reached his ears. His shoulders stiffened before he even turned. The sound was unmistakable, measured, sharp, confident. Isabella Roth approached like she still owned the ground she walked on. Tall, elegant, her golden hair perfectly arranged, she radiated the effortless arrogance of old money. Once she had been his fiancée. Now she was a storm he thought he had left behind. "Adrian," she said smoothly, sliding into the seat across from him without asking. He set the cup down with deliberate calm. "You don't belong here," he said flatly. Her smile widened as if his coldness amused her. "Still dramatic. I heard you were staying at the Imperial. Thought I'd come see for myself. Imagine my surprise when I spotted you with housekeeping." His jaw tightened. "Stay out of my life, Isabella." She leaned in, her perfume sharp and deliberate. "I see more than you think. A maid, Adrian? Really? The press will love this. Billionaire clings to commoner after tragic downfall. They'll devour her alive." Adrian's voice turned to steel. "Leave Maya out of this. She has nothing to do with you." Isabella's eyes gleamed with cruelty. "Oh, she has everything to do with me now. You embarrassed me once, remember? Walking away from our engagement without explanation. Do you know what humiliation feels like in my world? My family still whispers about it at every dinner party. And now I finally have the chance to return the favor." He leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. If you threaten her, you'll regret it. She smirked. I don't need to threaten. I simply need to show the world what she is. A maid. A poor, desperate girl clinging to a man who could buy and sell her life 10 times over. You really think she'll survive that kind of spotlight? Adrian's hands curled into fists, but he forced himself to stay composed. You've sunk lower than I imagined. Isabella's gaze flickered with cold amusement. No, Adrian, I've risen higher, and you, with all your billions, are about to discover how easily I can destroy both of you. She stood gracefully, smoothing her dress. Before turning away, she whispered close to his ear, 24 hours. End this ridiculous infatuation, or I will end her. Adrian's eyes followed her as she strode away, each step echoing like a countdown clock. He took a slow breath, forcing his heartbeat back under control. Isabella had always been ruthless, but this was different. This was personal. Later that evening, he found Maya in the suite, quietly arranging flowers in a vase. The moment she saw his expression, she paused. Something's wrong, she said softly. Adrian hesitated. He didn't want to burden her, but the truth could not be hidden. Isabella is here. She knows about us. Maya's hand trembled slightly, though she set the flowers down carefully. Your ex-fiancé? Yes. And she's threatened to expose you, to destroy your life if I don't end this. Her face paled. She whispered, She can't do that. I'll lose everything. My job, my home, my grandmother's care. Adrian stepped forward quickly, his tone fierce. No, she won't take anything from you. I won't let her. Maya looked at him, torn between fear and disbelief. You don't understand. People like her, they don't need truth. They just need power. And I'm the easiest target imaginable. He reached out, gently taking her hands. Then we face her together. Whatever comes, I won't abandon you. Her eyes searched his, desperate to believe, but her voice cracked. I can't survive being humiliated in public. I'm not built for that world. Adrian's grip tightened. Neither am I. But maybe together, we're strong enough. Tears burned her eyes, though she blinked them back. You make it sound so simple. But I know women like her. They don't stop until they win. Adrian's jaw hardened. Then I'll make sure she loses. Maya stepped back, her voice trembling. This is madness. You're asking me to risk everything for something that barely started. His words came with a weight of certainty. It started the moment you walked into this room. Whether you accept it or not, Maya, this is real, and I'm not letting her take it from me. She turned away, pressing a hand to her forehead. For years, she had lived by one rule: never draw attention. Invisibility had been her shield. Now, standing in the penthouse of one of the most powerful men in the world, with his ruthless ex-fiancé looming like a storm, that shield was crumbling. Finally, she whispered, If she attacks me, what will you do? Adrian's answer was immediate, his voice sharp as a blade. Whatever it takes. The silence stretched, heavy with fear and unspoken longing. That night, Maya lay awake in her small apartment, listening to her grandmother's soft breathing in the next room. She stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, every thought consumed by Adrian's words. Whatever it takes. And across town, Isabella poured herself a glass of wine, flipping through the photographs she had received of Adrian and Maya together. She smiled coldly and whispered to herself, By tomorrow, she'll be nothing but dust beneath my heel. The next morning, the city woke to the sound of horns and chatter, but in the penthouse suite of the Imperial Grand, silence pressed heavy. Adrian stood by the window, staring at the skyline without seeing it. His coffee sat untouched on the table. The memory of Isabella's voice, smooth, cruel, final, still rang in his head. 24 hours. A soft knock pulled him from the spiral. Maya entered quietly, her uniform crisp, but her face pale. She set her cleaning supplies near the wall and finally asked, Did she mean it? About destroying me? Adrian turned to face her. His voice was steady, though anger simmered underneath. Yes. Isabella doesn't bluff. Maya's chest rose sharply, as if air had suddenly become scarce. Then maybe we should end this before it goes any further, before she ruins us both. Adrian crossed the room in 2 strides, his tone sharp. No. That's what she wants. I won't let her dictate our lives. Maya's voice trembled. You don't understand what it's like to live under constant judgment. You're used to the spotlight, I'm not. If she drags my name through the mud, if she sends pictures to the press, I won't survive it. Adrian's hand reached for hers, grounding her. Maya, listen to me. For the first time in years, I feel alive. Do you really think I'll walk away because of her threats? She has no power unless we let her. Maya met his eyes, fear colliding with something deeper. Hope. Then what do we do? Before Adrian could answer, his phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen. Isabella. With a grimace, he answered. What do you want? Her voice flowed through the speaker, calm and cutting. I want to remind you of the clock. 23 hours now. When I walk into your suite tomorrow, either she'll be gone or her life will be over in every way that matters. Maya froze, her face draining of color. Adrian's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Touch her, and you'll regret it. Isabella laughed, a sound without warmth. Oh, darling, I don't need to touch her. The world will do that for me. I'll simply give them the story they're hungry for. Your little maid will never recover. Adrian ended the call before she could say more. He shoved the phone aside, his breathing harsh. Maya whispered, She sounded so sure of herself. He turned back to her, gripping her shoulders. That's because she doesn't know us. She thinks fear will break us, but I won't let fear make our decisions. Maya swallowed hard. Then what decision do we make? Hours slipped by in tense silence. Adrian paced, working through options like battle plans, but every strategy led back to one truth. Isabella's weapon was exposure. She thrived in shadows and whispers. The only way to beat her would be to drag everything into the light. By evening, Maya sat across from him at the suite's dining table, exhaustion written across her face. Finally, she spoke with quiet resolve. What if we stop hiding? What if we tell the story ourselves, before she can twist it? Adrian frowned. Go public. You'd be putting yourself in the spotlight you're most afraid of. Maya nodded slowly. Yes, but if we do it on our terms, the world won't see shame. They'll see truth. We control the narrative instead of letting her poison it. Adrian stared at her, stunned by her courage. You'd be willing to face that? Her voice carried a trembling strength. If it means protecting what we have, yes. I'm tired of living invisible. Maybe it's time I let myself be seen. Adrian felt something inside him break and rebuild all at once. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Then we fight together, not in the shadows, out loud. The decision settled between them like a vow, but Isabella wasn't finished. Later that night, while Maya returned home to check on her grandmother, Adrian's phone lit up again. This time it wasn't a call, but a file. Photographs. Dozens of them. Maya stepping into his suite, Maya laughing with him on the terrace, Maya's hand resting on his. Each image framed to tell a scandalous story. A message followed. Tomorrow, these go everywhere. Unless you end it. Adrian clenched his jaw, fury igniting. He deleted nothing. Evidence was power, and he knew how to wield it. When Maya returned the next morning, he showed her the message. She pressed a hand to her lips, whispering, She really has everything. Adrian shook his head. No, she thinks she does, but she doesn't have us. Their plan crystallized quickly. They would share their story openly. Adrian's trauma, Maya's compassion, the way they had found healing in each other. They would strip Isabella of the weapon of secrecy. And Adrian had another piece of leverage, the quiet investigation he had commissioned weeks ago. As Maya poured tea in the small kitchenette, Adrian finally confessed. I hired someone to look into Isabella, to understand how she could keep funding these attacks. Maya looked up cautious, and his answer was a low thunder. She's been stealing from her own family's foundation, money meant for children's hospitals. Hundreds of thousands funneled into her private accounts. Maya's eyes widened with horror. She's hurting children to fuel her revenge. Yes, Adrian said firmly. And if she pushes us, we'll push back harder. We don't just survive her, we end her game entirely. For the first time in days, Maya's fear gave way to fire. Then let's do it. Let's expose her, and let's do it before her deadline expires. The countdown was nearly finished. Hours remained, not days. They had to move quickly. That evening, Adrian arranged a meeting in the hotel lounge, the very place Isabella had confronted him before. When she arrived, dressed in flawless white silk and smiling with venom, he felt Maya's hand slip into his. Isabella's eyes narrowed. Touching. You think holding hands will save her? Adrian met her gaze without flinching. No, truth will. Maya's voice was steady, though her fingers trembled in his. You're terrified of us, not because of what we are, but because of what you aren't. Isabella scoffed. And what exactly am I not? Maya answered with quiet force. Loved. You've never been loved for who you are. That's why you're trying to destroy us, because it proves you never had what we do. For a fraction of a second, Isabella's mask cracked, but then her smile returned, sharper than glass. You'll regret this performance. The clock runs out tomorrow. Adrian leaned forward, his tone final. Then, tomorrow, the world learns the truth. About me, about Maya, and about you. Isabella's smile faltered, just slightly, enough to show she had felt the strike. She turned on her heel and walked away, her heels echoing like war drums. Maya exhaled slowly once she was gone, her grip on Adrian's hand tightening. She won't stop. Adrian nodded. Neither will we. That night, as they sat together in the penthouse with laptops open, press contacts queued, and evidence files ready for release, Adrian felt the strangest thing. Not fear, not even anger, but hope. For the first time, he believed they might not only survive Isabella's threats, but emerge stronger. As the clock ticked closer to the deadline, Maya whispered, "We're really doing this." Adrian kissed her hand softly and answered, "Yes, together, whatever comes." And as midnight approached, the battle line was drawn. The next morning dawned grey, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened rain. Inside the penthouse, Adrian and Maya sat side by side, their laptops open, their decision sealed. Today was the deadline. Today, Isabella would either unleash her attack or be dismantled by the truth. Maya's hands shook slightly as she typed, drafting the words that would change her life forever. She had never thought the world would know her name, let alone her story. Adrian reached across the table and touched her wrist. "We'll do this together," he said quietly. She looked at him, her eyes searching for courage in his steady gaze. "Then let's not wait. If we hesitate, she wins." Adrian nodded. He hit send on the press release they had prepared, a statement to major outlets and social media. The headline was simple but powerful. Tech billionaire Adrian Cross and hotel worker Maya Lopez share their story of healing and love. Within minutes, responses began flooding in. Reporters demanded interviews, influencers retweeted the statement, strangers commented with disbelief and curiosity. But the heart of the message was clear. They had chosen honesty over secrecy, vulnerability over fear. Maya exhaled a shaky breath. It's out there. No turning back now. Before Adrian could reply, his phone rang. Isabella's number lit the screen. He answered with a calmness that surprised even him. "What do you want?" Her voice was icy, stripped of its usual charm. "You think you can outplay me by going public?" Adrian replied flatly. "We don't need to outplay you. We just needed to take away your weapon." Isabella's tone sharpened. "You've made a mistake. You've invited the wolves to the table. Do you really think the world will embrace your little fairy tale? They'll rip her apart." Maya leaned close enough for her voice to carry through the speaker. "Maybe they will, but at least they'll hear it from us, not from you." For the first time, Isabella hesitated. The silence on the line spoke louder than words. Then she spat. "This isn't over. You'll regret humiliating me." Adrian ended the call without another word. By midday, their story had spread across the internet. Headlines ranged from mocking to sympathetic. Some called it a scandal, others a modern romance. Comment sections erupted with debate. Was Maya a gold digger? Was Adrian desperate? Or was it possible that their story was genuine? Maya sat scrolling through articles, her chest tightening with every cruel word. One headline screamed, "Billionaire's desperation, maid becomes miracle cure." Another read, "From mop to mansion, the love story no one asked for." She closed the laptop, whispering, "I can't look at this anymore." Adrian pulled her into his arms. "Don't. None of them know us. They only know the picture Isabella wanted them to see. Soon they'll know more." He reached for a folder on the table, the financial evidence against Isabella. Numbers, accounts, wire transfers, each one a nail in her carefully constructed facade. That evening, with the storm finally breaking outside, Adrian sent the files to both law enforcement and trusted journalists. The truth was no longer in his hands alone. Hours later, as rain battered the windows, Isabella appeared in the hotel lounge. She had not been summoned, yet here she was, dressed in black as though for battle. Adrian and Maya waited for her, side by side, unyielding. Isabella's heels clicked against the marble as she approached. Her voice dripped with disdain. "So this is it? You've reduced yourself to parading your shame in public." Adrian answered evenly, "This is it. No more games, no more threats. You don't own our story anymore." Isabella's eyes narrowed on Maya. "Do you really think he'll stay with you once the novelty wears off? You're a distraction, nothing more. When his body no longer needs you, you'll be discarded like every other servant." Maya's voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I'm not with him because of his money. I'm with him because he sees me, and I see him. That's something you'll never understand." For a moment, Isabella's composure slipped. Her lips tightened, her eyes flickered, but she quickly recovered, turning her attention back to Adrian. "If you think you've won, you're mistaken. The press feeds on blood. They'll tear her apart piece by piece." Adrian stepped closer, his voice low and lethal. "And while they're busy, the FBI will be tearing apart your accounts." Confusion darted across her features, quickly masked by a scoff. "What nonsense is this?" Adrian held her gaze. "You've been stealing from your family's foundation for years. Money meant for sick children, for cancer research, for schools, all of it siphoned into your private life. And now the world knows." Maya added softly, "You thought you were untouchable, but you left a trail. And we found it." Isabella's face drained of color, though she fought to maintain her sneer. "You wouldn't dare." Adrian's tone was merciless. "I already did." At that moment, her phone buzzed. She glanced down, her eyes widening at the flood of notifications, news alerts, messages, calls. Journalists had the story. Law enforcement had the evidence. The storm outside thundered as if punctuating the moment. Isabella's mask shattered. "You'll pay for this," she hissed. Maya's voice rose with unexpected strength. "No, for once you will." Isabella spun on her heel and strode out of the lounge, but this time her steps carried desperation instead of confidence. Adrian turned to Maya, the tension in his body finally breaking. "It's done," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. Maya collapsed into his arms, relief and disbelief flooding her all at once. "We really did it. We faced her, and we're still standing." The hours that followed blurred together. News outlets exploded with stories of Isabella's embezzlement, her betrayal of her own family's trust. Images of her leaving her apartment under the shadow of federal agents dominated every channel. For Adrian and Maya, the media storm swirled in two directions. On one side, endless fascination with their relationship. On the other, outrage and fascination at Isabella's downfall. By midnight, they sat together on the balcony of the penthouse, rain finally easing into mist. Adrian leaned back, weary but lighter than he had been in years. 3 years of silence, of shame, and now it's over. Maya rested her head on his shoulder. Not over. Just beginning. He kissed the top of her head gently. Beginning of what? Her answer came softly with a conviction that surprised even her. The beginning of us, without fear, without secrets. For the first time in years, Adrian allowed himself to believe it. The storm had broken, but what remained was not destruction, it was freedom. As the city lights shimmered through the mist, Adrian whispered, "You saved me, Maya." And she replied, her voice steady and warm, "We saved each other." The days following Isabella's downfall blurred into a whirlwind of flashing cameras, headlines, and endless questions. The hotel became less a sanctuary and more a stage, every corridor humming with speculation about Adrian Cross and the woman who had somehow changed his life. Adrian watched the frenzy with a strange calm. For 3 years he had hidden in shame, and now his most private struggle was public property. But instead of humiliation, he felt something unexpected. Release. The secret that had chained him no longer held power. Maya, however, felt the weight differently. Every time she stepped into the lobby, staff and guests whispered, some with curiosity, others with envy, some with open judgment. She kept her head high, but in the quiet of the suite, she admitted softly, "I'm not sure I can survive living under everyone's eyes like this." Adrian touched her hand across the table, his voice steady. "Then we change the story. We don't let the world turn this into gossip. We turn it into purpose." Maya looked at him, doubtful. "So how do we do that?" He leaned forward. "By building something bigger than us, something that proves what we went through wasn't just scandal. It was healing, and that healing belongs to more people than just me." The idea took root faster than either of them expected. Within a week, Adrian had convened his advisors and begun drafting plans for a new foundation. Its mission, to support individuals whose education or opportunities had been cut short by tragedy. Maya's story became the heart of it, how she had been forced to abandon nursing school to care for her grandmother, how countless others lived the same reality. At the first board meeting, Adrian explained, "This isn't charity. This is investment. People like Maya hold the world together quietly without recognition. If we give them the tools they lost, they can transform everything." Reporters who had once salivated at the scandal now found a different headline: Billionaire and Maid Launch Scholarship Foundation. The tone of coverage shifted from mockery to inspiration. Maya found herself on stages she never imagined, speaking not as a servant but as a voice for thousands like her. One evening, after a long day of interviews and planning, she sat on the penthouse balcony with Adrian, watching the city glow. She said quietly, "Do you realize how many lives this could touch?" He turned to her, his expression soft. "Do you realize you're the one who made me believe it was possible?" She smiled faintly. "I wanted to heal people as a nurse. Maybe this is another way of doing it." Adrian pulled her closer. "You're healing more than bodies. You're healing hope." But healing wasn't limited to the world outside. Inside their relationship, scars remained. There were nights when Adrian still woke from dreams of the accident, his body tense with old guilt. Maya would place a hand on his chest and whisper, "You're here. You're safe. You're not alone anymore." Slowly, the nightmares loosened their grip, and there were moments when Maya doubted her worth, when a headline or a cruel comment cut too deep. Adrian never dismissed her fears. Instead, he listened, and when the silence grew too heavy, he reminded her, "You're not defined by what they say. You're defined by who you are, and who you are is everything I never knew I needed." 6 months after their story first broke, the Foundation's office opened in a renovated floor of Adrian's company headquarters. The walls were decorated with photographs of scholarship recipients, hotel workers studying medicine, janitors pursuing law degrees, retail clerks training as teachers. Maya spent her afternoons meeting with applicants, listening to their stories. She told Adrian one evening, "They remind me of who I used to be, but they also remind me of who I'm becoming." Their personal life flourished alongside the mission. Adrian's condition, once a source of despair, became a symbol of his healing. At a follow-up appointment, his physician shook his head in wonder and said, "Cases like yours will be studied for years. Complete psychological recovery leading to full physical restoration. It's extraordinary." Adrian smiled, glancing at Maya beside him. "It's not medicine that healed me. It was connection." Months passed, and with them came a rhythm neither had dared hope for. Adrian managed his empire with a new sense of purpose. his decisions less about profit and more about impact. Maya continued her work at the foundation, though she still insisted on visiting her grandmother daily, caring for her with the same devotion that had defined her life long before Adrian. One crisp autumn evening, as leaves spiraled across the city streets, Maya came home from the foundation, carrying a small envelope. She placed it on the table in front of Adrian and said with a quiet smile, "I think you should open this." He frowned curiously, tearing it open. Inside was a medical report. His eyes scanned the words, then froze. He looked up at her, stunned. "You're pregnant." Maya nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "We're going to have a baby." Adrian stood slowly, the paper trembling in his hands. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then he crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, his voice breaking. "I never thought I'd get to have this. A family. A future. You've given me everything." Maya pressed her cheek against his chest, whispering, "We built it together. Out of brokenness." The news spread quickly, and once again the media stormed. But this time the headlines were different. They spoke of growth, of legacy, of a love story that had not only survived scandal but blossomed into family. Public opinion shifted decisively. What had begun as ridicule now inspired thousands. Months later, in a quiet hospital room bathed in morning light, Maya gave birth to a daughter. Adrian held the tiny child in his arms, tears streaming freely. He whispered, "She's perfect. She's ours." Maya, exhausted but radiant, replied softly, "Our miracle. Our hope." They named her Hope Cross, a living symbol of what they had fought for, what they had survived. As Adrian rocked his daughter gently, he realized that the arc of his life had bent from despair to redemption, from silence to love. He had once believed he was broken beyond repair. Now he understood that healing was never about returning to who he had been. It was about becoming someone new, stronger, deeper, whole. And as Maya drifted into sleep beside him, he looked at both of them and whispered to himself, "This is the beginning of everything." The years that followed were not quiet, but they were full. From the first cry of their daughter, Hope, Adrian, and Maya's lives changed in ways neither of them could have imagined. The penthouse that once echoed with emptiness now rang with laughter, late-night feedings, and the soft coos of a child who had no idea she had been born into both scandal and salvation. Adrian often found himself standing at the edge of Hope's crib, watching her sleep. He whispered once in the dark, "You'll never know the loneliness I knew. Not while I'm alive." Maya stirred beside him, overhearing. She placed a hand on his arm and said softly, "She doesn't need to know. All she'll know is love. That's enough." And it was. The Cross Lopez Foundation grew quickly, expanding beyond scholarships to fund mental health programs, grief counseling, and medical assistance for families who had lost their primary caregivers. It became one of the most respected philanthropic initiatives in the country, and its story was inseparable from Maya's. At conferences, Maya stood before rooms filled with people in suits far more expensive than anything she had ever worn before. Yet she spoke with a humility that silenced even the most cynical executives. "Healing isn't something you do alone," she said once, her voice steady. "It's something we create for each other. Adrian found healing through me, but I found healing through him too. Now, through this foundation, we hope to extend that to as many people as possible." Adrian sat in the front row that day, his eyes never leaving her. He felt pride, yes, but more than that, awe. The maid who once thought she was invisible had become a voice the world could not ignore. Still, legacy wasn't just about public work. It was about the small daily choices that built a life worth remembering. Adrian insisted on cooking breakfast most mornings, even though Maya teased that he burned the eggs half the time. Hope grew up with her father on the floor playing blocks and her mother reading bedtime stories in Spanish, keeping the thread of her family's heritage alive. One evening, when Hope was 4, she climbed into Adrian's lap and asked, "Daddy, why do people take pictures of you and Mommy all the time?" Adrian looked into her curious eyes, unsure how much truth a child could understand. "Because they see something special in us," he answered gently. "But what matters most is what we are here together, not what they say out there." Hope nodded solemnly, as if this explained everything. She then pressed a kiss to his cheek and declared, "I think you and Mommy are superheroes." Maya laughed from across the room, replying, "Superheroes who still need to clean up after dinner, mi amor." The simplicity of those moments was what Adrian treasured most. But legacy had another dimension, one neither of them could ignore. Isabella Roth's name resurfaced from time to time, attached to trials, lawsuits, and eventually a quiet prison sentence. Though she no longer had the power to hurt them, her ghost lingered as a reminder of what unchecked bitterness could do. One night, after reading an article about Isabella's final conviction, Maya said quietly, "It's sad, in a way. She had every advantage, and she chose to destroy herself instead of build something good." Adrian held her hand. "She lived for control. You live for love. That's the difference." Maya thought about that for a long time. In her heart, she resolved that their legacy would not just be about money or influence, but about love multiplied, passed down through every person they touched. When Hope turned 7, the foundation launched a global initiative. They partnered with hospitals in 5 countries to provide care for children who had lost parents. At the opening ceremony in Brazil, Maya stood on stage with Adrian and their daughter at her side. Cameras flashed, but for Maya all she saw were the faces of children in the crowd. She bent to whisper in Hope's ear, "This is why we do what we do. For them." Hope looked up at her mother and replied simply, "Then we'll never stop." Adrian caught the words and felt a surge of emotion he hadn't expected. Their daughter was already understanding the weight of legacy. Years later, when Hope was a teenager, Adrian found her in the foundation's office, reading applications from scholarship candidates. She looked up and said, "Dad, did you know some of these people sleep in cars just to stay close to school? They're my age, and they're still trying." Adrian sat beside her, his voice low. "That's why this matters, because once your mother was one of them, and in a different way so was I." Hope asked, "Do you think I'll be able to carry it when you and Mom are gone?" Adrian felt a lump rise in his throat. He placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "You won't carry it alone. No one should. But yes, you'll be ready, because you'll do it the same way we did, together with love." The foundation endured, their family endured, and in time, their story shifted from scandal to legend, retold not as a tale of shame, but as proof that love could grow in the most unlikely soil. One evening, when Adrian's hair had begun to grey and Hope was preparing for university, he and Maya sat again on the balcony of the penthouse, watching the city lights. It was the same view from years ago, but everything had changed. Adrian said softly, "Do you ever think about how it all began? A maid walking into a broken man's room." Maya smiled faintly, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Every day, and every day, I'm grateful I didn't walk out." He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Neither did I." The city glittered below them, unaware of the quiet moment above. Their legacy was no longer about survival. It was about what they had built: love, healing, family, hope. A story that began in pain but ended in light. And as Maya closed her eyes, listening to the steady beat of Adrian's heart, she knew the truth that would outlive both of them. Real legacy is not written in wealth or power, but in the lives we touch, the love we give, and the hope we leave behind.